Hey everybody, KC here. So I was recently perusing a couple of studies that were put out by 8451. One was on shaping a new normal, what brands need to know about the post-pandemic grocery shopper. Now that struck me as kind of interesting because when they issued that study just a couple of months ago, there was an assumption that we were going to be post-pandemic pretty soon. Um, so that was interesting to me. The other one that they came out with recently was about what brands need to know going into the holidays in 2021, and I wondered if at some level um, normal expectations have changed because listen, let's face it, we're living in a different world now than we lived in 2 years ago. And in fact, I wonder if 2021 is going to be more like 2020 than people might have expected again just a couple of months ago. These are just some of the questions I had, so I reached out to Barbara Connors, who's the VP of Commercial Insights at 8451, so we could talk about some of these issues. And she was nice enough to spend some time with me on Zoom. I recorded it, as I usually do, and I hope you enjoy our conversation. By the way, if you look down below, there'll be links to the two studies if you want to download them. So without any further ado, my conversation with Barbara Connors of 8451. Barbara Connors, welcome to Morning Newsbeat.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for doing this. So it was just, a few short months ago that 8451 released its study about the post-pandemic grocery shopper. And sort of the baked into even just the title is that we were coming to the end of the pandemic. And I'm curious now, some months later, I was about to say, things have changed just since May and June, but in some ways things have stayed the same since May of June to a degree we maybe didn't expect back then. So I guess my first question is sort of like, how has this affected what you guys are seeing in terms of your research and your studies?
Yeah, so when we put that report out in late spring, vaccinations were increasing across the country. COVID concern was starting to decline. As a result, people were starting to head out of their homes, start to go back to restaurants. We saw people start to go back in-store shopping and move some of their purchases from e-com to in-store. And what none of us were expecting was that we would have the introduction of the Delta variant in midsummer that would then change that course entirely from what we thought was going to happen. As a result, COVID concerns started to rise again. And as a result, we started to see two key trends happen. There's a strong correlation between COVID concern and a migration back to e-commerce. So when we saw, especially in states where you had high vaccination rates and trends where people were starting to go back or change their shopping habits between e-com and in store, we saw a quick spike change when you had COVID cases rise and concern rise. We also saw key shifts in how people were eating, and a trend where people were starting to go back to restaurants, and very quickly beginning sort of in August, we saw that shift back towards at-home cooking. As a result, we then asked customers and said, you're now starting to eat at home again more and pulling back from restaurant eating. Why is that? Because what we want to try and understand is how much of this is tied to those external short-term factors and what is indicative of a long-term sustained behavior trend. And what we found is that the top 4 reasons why customers told us that they're eating at home again now more, the top 2 are tied to those external factors. One is COVID concern, the other is price. It's more expensive to eat out now. Prices are higher in general to eat, but it's particularly high now to eat out, and that value exchange isn't quite there. The next 2 are actually more indicative of a long-term behavior trend change. So the next 2 reasons are, one, I like cooking at home now. So I started doing this because of the pandemic maybe, but actually I enjoy cooking. And the other is that I've made it a choice to lead a healthier lifestyle, and I can better control what I eat, and I can better lead a healthier lifestyle if I cook it myself. And so those 2 things really tell us that, okay, there's actually a strong contingent of customers that even after the impact of the pandemic is gone, are going to continue to cook at home and eat at home at a greater rate than we saw pre-pandemic. And had we not had this brief period in the summer where people started to go out and then started to come back in, we wouldn't have known which of those behaviors are really tied to those short-term impacts of the pandemic and which are really those sustained behavior trends. And that's really something that was a new learning that's emerged over the last couple of weeks, really.
Yeah. It is interesting. The price thing. I mean, I don't know if you've had this experience. I know when my wife and I went out, and it was some point during the summer, we just went out to a little Italian restaurant in town. We sat outside, ordered a large salad. We were going to split a pizza and a bottle of wine. And it was like, when we got the bill, it was like a shock just because we hadn't done it in a year and a half. And it's like, whoa, it's a lot. And certainly on the wine issue, it's a lot cheaper to drink wine at home than it is to drink it in a restaurant. And I do think there's a kind of sticker shock to that.
Yeah.
I wonder, you mentioned 4 factors, and I wonder if you've done any research around this. I wonder if there's also a 5th factor, which is that there are a lot of restaurants. I mean, there's a couple of things that's happened with restaurants. First of all, and I've noticed that in a number of restaurants that we go to, there are signs saying, "We're short-staffed, please be patient," right? Mm-hmm. So it's not necessary, you're not getting the levels of service that you were getting before the pandemic. Yeah. And the other thing is restaurants have closed. I know somebody who was in outside in Maine, outside Portland, at the end of August, and he and his wife you would go there every summer, and there were usually like 8 different restaurants they'd go to. One of them was still open, and the other 7 had closed because they just couldn't get people to staff. So I wonder if those issues are also affecting whether or not people are going to restaurants or are still eating at home.
Oh, I'm sure it does. I mean, there will be a long-term impact on just the restaurant industry at large.
Yeah, it's it's also it's interesting though. I think that I think there were a lot of retailers who felt that when they were getting that market share from restaurants, mm-hmm. They were just going to keep it. Mm-hmm. And didn't think they had to actively work to keep it. I'm not saying a lot, I'm not saying all, but I'm just saying there was a percentage because they were just having some of the best quarters of their lives. But I would imagine that they're still going to have to work this business, right? They can't be complacent about this going forward.
Oh, sure. One of the new trends that's really emerged is the hyper importance of convenience.
Right.
So customers are telling us that they're stressed, they don't have time, and convenience plays out both in how they shop and in the method with which they're going to get their groceries, but then also through at home. They tell us that they don't have time to cook. Even if you do enjoy cooking at home, they say that they're tired of doing dishes, and in the meal prep itself, they want to be easier. So even if we say we believe that at-home cooking is going to remain at a higher rate than it was pre-pandemic, you still, as a retailer and a brand, have to ensure that if customers are going to continue cooking at home, they're still going to you for those purchases. It's not a given that all that grocery spend is going to come to you. And I think the real learning out of this is we need to make it really easy for customers and for people to cook at home and do it in a way that food is enjoyable, meets the health needs that they're looking for, and fits into a new lifestyle. And that comes to play in more ready to heat, ready to cook food options, and brands thinking about innovation and the products they bring to market being easier for customers to cook. And then also even thinking about like packaging and how do we just make it easier for you to just pop it in the oven so that we're helping prevent the cleanup before you even have to worry about it.
Yeah. I also think we haven't seen yet the kind of innovation that we eventually may see from the restaurant industry where, everybody talks about grocerants, right? Which is grocery stores that have become like restaurants. I still think we're going to see restaurant markets, right? We're going to see restaurants develop market sections so that they're not just dependent on those people who come in, they book a table for 2 or for 4, sit down and go through the whole thing. They're going to figure out at some point that they need to kind of develop the market side of their business as a way of protecting themselves on the downside from downsides that could happen down the road.
Yeah, that makes me think of 2 things. So one is when customers were really at the height of cooking at home, and restaurants were closed, some temporarily. And we asked customers, what can retailers and brands do to help you? A lot of what they told us was, help me work through what I have in my pantry. So give me new options or new recipes. It helps me like move through all the products I've stocked up on.
Right.
One actually was, how can you help me recreate some of my like restaurant favorites? So there are foods that I loved eating out. How can I recreate that experience at home? So helping customers have that restaurant like quality at home is one piece of this. The other is, I think where you were going as well, is thinking about the in-store experience differently. And now that people can use e-commerce to get hyper convenience and just get the product, either like I can drive up and pick it up, or I just get it delivered straight to my door. When you come to a store, it is for experience. We've found from customers that they say, I actually want to go because I want to talk to people and I like engaging with the associates. Yeah. There are certain items I want to pick out for myself and they're really important to my meal, and I want the control over making sure I pick the right one. I think your Thanksgiving turkey as an example. Right. But there's also joy that comes from coming into stores, especially as we head into the holidays. It's like, I have new festive seasonal offerings I can get in store. There are things that I may not have been aware of because there's new product innovation, but then there's also this whole experiential level that we can bring to the in-store shopping experience that you just can't get at home. And you find that you'll use that space differently.
Yeah, I mean, what you're speaking to, I think, is where I've always thought some percentage of the supermarket industry is going to go, which is creating a store. The physical store will focus more on fresh and experiential and maybe seasonal, but you don't need the aisles to buy Cheerios and Oreos and Tide, right? That can be very much an online purchase in advance. You pick that stuff up, but then you have that fresh experience, which would be differentiated.
Exactly.
It also seems to me one of the things you just point out, I hadn't even thought of it in those terms when you talk about what can I do with all the stuff I've stocked up on. I mean, it seems to me that that's an opportunity for retailers who have good data and the ability to act on good data. And, Kroger 8451 would be an example of this, where you actually can analyze what people have bought a lot of. And so you could offer a very personal email marketing piece to me, because you say, well, geez, Kevin, you got 87 pounds of pasta in your, or whatever.
Yep.
But you don't have any sauce. So we have, right? And so we've got this new line of sauces, or we've got this fresh sauce, or we can teach you how to make a fresh vodka sauce. Yeah. Right. That is an opportunity for the retailer going forward to sort of act on that information.
Absolutely. And it's a way to do it in a way that helps the customer.
Right.
So it is relevant to them, and it is also giving them something that they're telling us they want. They're saying what looks like help to me is more recipes that help me change it up. So I'm not making the same pasta every week, but now I'm changing it up a little bit. And oh, by the way, I'm also being fiscally responsible because I'm using things I've already bought. And then we also found that customers are saying that using things they have in their pantry is also a way that they're helping to save the environment and lead a more sustainable lifestyle, is by working through what they already have and being smarter about using products they have on hand.
The customer bifurcation in some ways is so interesting. And the thing that stuck out to me in your post-pandemic consumer report was two observations. One is consumers are trying to be healthier, and also consumers are drinking more. And it struck me as first of all, totally true. Yeah. I mean, without giving way too much information, that totally describes my household. But it is such in some ways maybe we're all working out more so we can drink. I don't know, but that's an interesting reality about the current consumer.
100%. It also speaks to the struggle that we have in that space that's been longstanding, pre-pandemic and during. More than half of customers tell us that health is really important to them. As of our most recent poll, only 23% that they're actually more satisfied with their health than pre-pandemic. And when we asked them in the summer, it was 30%. So it's even gone down. So we want to be healthy. We have a hard time making that happen. And that's not only because of alcohol, but that's
Right.
just like one example where our aspirations don't always match like the behavior that we're actually exhibiting. And so there's an opportunity for brands and retailers to then provide options for customers to be healthier while also having food taste good. And say you don't have to sacrifice to be healthier.
Yeah. I don't know the degree to which you drill down either demographically or geographically, but I wonder if some of that is also the fact. I mean, I think most people are feeling a little bit more vulnerable. I mean, I think that's one of the things that the pandemic has awakened in us, a sense
Mhm.
of, well, maybe I'm not going to live forever.
Yeah.
And so even if you're healthy, even if you're jogging 4 or 5 days a week or lifting weights or whatever it happens to be and trying to eat healthy, there are a lot of healthy people who got sick, who have gotten sick during the
Yep.
pandemic. And I
Yep.
wonder if we're all feeling a little bit more mortal these days, and that's part of what you're seeing.
Yeah, and it shows in how we're defining health and what health means to us. So we also ask customers, when you're looking for health benefits, what's the most important thing you're looking for right now? And right now it is clean and simple ingredients. And what that tells me is we're evaluating our lifestyles and choices that we make during because of the pandemic. There's a lot of editing that we're doing about what activities we partake in and don't, and now like what we put in our bodies. And
Yeah.
that's a big shift from a diet centric view of health. I want low fat products to now I want to know what's in my food, and I want to be really purposeful about what I eat. And that to me indicates a long term view of health, and a sustainable choice, but also exactly what you pointed on is just it's just a view of like I want to be around for a long period of time,
Yeah.
and controlling what I eat is one way that I control over that.
Yeah. Are you seeing, there was another study that I saw that wasn't from you guys that talked a little bit about that there were that a majority of a surprise, it wasn't a majority, but a surprising percentage of consumers actually felt that their supermarkets had not done a particularly good job during the pandemic. And that can mean a lot of different things depending on who you are and where you are. But surprised me, I have to be honest, because there was so much conversation about supermarkets being essential that sort of surprised me. And the other thing it said that they really were upset that those prices were going up. Now that didn't surprise me because prices are going up.
Yep.
Are you seeing the same kinds of stuff in your research?
Not exactly. I mean, we haven't seen research that points to customers being disappointed in retailers, but there's certainly stress in the system.
Right.
And customers are more stressed than they were a month ago. When we asked most recently, what are the key reasons for stress? Top two were finances and COVID. So actually, most recently, finance beat out COVID as the number one
Wow.
stressor. And certainly, as you were asking about demographic, geographic differences, we know that lower income households were more or were disproportionately impacted by the financial stresses over the last year. So there is certainly tension within the system and stress relating to like what people are having to deal with right now. It is certainly exacerbated by the fact that sometimes it's harder to find the items you want on shelf.
Right.
I think that what this has highlighted to everyone in the industry and hopefully all of us at large is that there's just a lot of value in being empathetic towards those that are around you. We all are facing different challenges. We are all dealing with different stressors. We all have a unified objective around being healthy and happy and protecting one another. And I think if we can rally around things that unify us, there's a real opportunity to bring people together. And I think grocery has an opportunity to play that role because it is essential. People have to eat. And this has reaffirmed the value and role that the grocery industry plays in the daily lives of the customers that we serve.
You just used the word value in a different context, but it also occurs to me that this is a perfect, retailers have traditionally sort of used the word value and price as sort of as synonyms, right? They're the same thing. And it seems to me that in a lot of ways, this is a perfect time for retailers to actually stress that price and value are not the same thing. I mean, for example, you may pay a little bit more for fresh products, those products that are healthier for you to bring into your body, but the value of spending a little bit more money on those as opposed to potato chips and Oreos and beer, may, that value may be much, much greater. I mean, it seems to me this is a perfect time based on what you're identifying as prime concerns for retailers to really go after that message in a concerted way.
Yep. And it's also important to acknowledge that people value different things. For some, value is price, and price is the most important thing that I look at when I shop. For others, it is health. For some, it is time and convenience, and you're willing to pay more for a ready to cook meal because I don't have time to do dishes, or I'm willing to pay more so that I don't have to. So
Right.
it's really about understanding what is most important to your customers and what role your brand can play in meeting their needs. Sometimes it's price, sometimes it's not.
Yeah. One of the other things that was interesting, this had nothing to do with COVID, but although you were talking about the post-COVID consumer, was the notion that sustainability concerns are going to continue to grow among consumers.
Yep.
Are you able to track that back and see whether or not it's a reflection of, I mean, we've had certainly, even as we've been all suffering through COVID, the country has been suffering through, natural disasters, floods and hurricanes and droughts and all sorts of stuff. Mm-hmm. Is that a reflection of what people are either experiencing, depending on where they live in the country, or reading about online or in headlines?
So we do know, or we've seen that there is a higher awareness of waste, packaging waste, food waste, and a greater importance placed on your ability to prevent that or reduce it. It may not be the most important factor for every single customer, but it is growing in concern and importance. What is important is for brands and retailers to be vocal about efforts that they're taking to also help in this way. So the customers who do care about sustainability can connect on an emotional level with the brands that they want to affiliate themselves with. And we found that this can be really effective in not only advancing the cause. If this is something that as an enterprise you are focusing on and you want to help drive, invite customers who are buying your brands into that mission with you to help you both get there faster. And it also translates into greater brand loyalty. Yeah. So we've even seen this play out with Kroger's Zero Hunger, Zero Waste. So we're now entering the 4th year of this. And part of how Kroger goes to market is through engaging associates, through engaging partners, but also inviting customers to participate with them. And we found by tying campaigns that we run for Zero Hunger, Zero Waste and the customers who participated in it, that those who donate to Zero Hunger, Zero Waste actually become more loyal. So there's good business there too, and there's a real tangible, quantifiable opportunity to drive more brand loyalty by inviting customers who care about it too to join you in that cause.
Yeah. Well, and that is not about value. That's about shared values, which is yes. I think tremendously powerful. One other thing I loved in the report was at one point you were talking about digital champs versus digital dabblers.
Yeah.
And my first reaction was, I can remember when 10 years ago, when I'd be out doing speeches, I would talk about digital natives versus digital immigrants.
Yeah.
Is dabblers and champs, is that sort of this year's version of what I used to be talking about?
Potentially in a different way. What it is saying is that not all digital customers are created equal.
Right.
There is, especially as e-commerce adoption has grown, there's a wide spectrum between how customers are using it. And at that top end, the digital champs, as we call it, are those that they may be the top quarter of customers, but they represent 60% of e-com sales. And so they're the ones that use it on a regular basis. More than a third of their trips today come through e-com. And they behave differently than those who are still trying it out. And so it's important to make sure that you understand there's a spectrum of customers and they aren't all using it in the same way. And you need to engage them differently to help them and meet them where they're at on their journey.
Actually, let me ask you about that, because I did an interview with somebody from Morning Newsbeat last week. And one of the things we talked about in the conversation was the fact that almost every retailer went away from print circulars during the pandemic because they were not considered to be safe and went to digital. Mm-hmm. And a number of them have stayed with it, right? But some have gone back.
Mhm.
And my reaction to that was, oh, what are you going back for? You did the hard thing. You've made the move to digital. You're going to save money. You can be more nimble, and most people are going to be fine with all digital. And maybe you want to have something in the store that's on paper, but you've really done something really important. And I question the wisdom of going back. I've been roundly criticized for that on Morning News Beat by some readers saying, not everybody has a smartphone, not everybody has a computer,
Yeah.
And be nice to old people, which I found to be a compliment because they don't think I'm one of them. So, but what do you think about that? Was this the opportunity for retailers to say, hey, listen, we're not going to be in the print business anymore. We're going to be all digital, or are the people who are criticizing me right?
I think today it's an acknowledgement of the fact that some customers still want a print circular. And so retailers that are continuing to do both are being customer first and saying, for those that want to engage with it digitally, I'm going to give it to them digitally. Those that want to still go in store and those want to use print, we're going to give them that option too. And until customers say that they don't want it, it's in the best interest of a retailer to meet the customer where they're at and give them value and communication in the way that they want to consume it.
I really appreciate the fact that you gave that whole answer without using the sentence, Kevin, you were wrong. So I appreciate that. Last question. So we've talked a lot about the post-pandemic customer, even in the middle, as we remain in the middle of the pandemic. You've also come out with a study about a report about going into the holiday season, what to expect in the holiday season. Real quickly, if you had a couple of words of advice for retailers going forward, thinking about the holidays and maybe how they ought to adjust their thinking going forward because the pandemic is still with us and we don't know where we're going to be in November, December, what would you suggest?
Yep. Have the emphasis on e-com is critical. Even last year when we talked about those digital champs, 72% of their spend came on e-com. So as e-com adoption has grown, expect more spend is going to come through e-com. That being said, we also knew last year, analyzing behavior, that when people were shopping on e-com during the holidays, they actually spent less time creating their order. So if you think, even though people are spending more at bigger baskets, time is constrained and you have a short attention span to be able to influence their decisions. So be really purposeful about the content that you put in front of them because you've got a short window to be able to impact their purchase. In-store shopping will continue to be leveraged by customers. Hybrid shoppers are here to stay, and use the store to really bring joy and bring fun and bring festive and bring inspiration to customers that are walking down your aisles. And then the last is have a focus on ethnic foods. So we know that customers are looking for just a change in their repertoire and what they're making and cooking at home. But we also know that for customers that do make more authentic meals, they're even more likely to make authentic traditional meals during the holidays. So meeting the needs of those customers while also bringing something new to others that may not traditionally make those dishes is a way to bring inspiration to the aisle as well.
Well, Barbara, this has been fascinating. I loved reading the reports, and I can share the email links, the links with my audience, right? So people can download them as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Terrific. Hey, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. I hope maybe when we're really coming out of the pandemic, we can go back and talk about it again.
Sounds great. Thanks.
That's good. Thanks. Take care.
Bye.